So today we're starting a new series, and I believe, and I want you to hear the pastor today, every day, but especially today. I believe the content of this series over the next 4 weeks can change your perspective on your life. Now, I hope to do that every week. I hope God gives me exactly what He wants to share so that it can change how you live your life and perceive your life. But I believe, as much as I have ever believed it, that this series can give you some revelation in your life that you're needing. How many of you, would you raise your hand and say, hey, I'm ready? Give it to me, I'm ready. All right, here we go. We all deal with life. We all deal with temptation. We all deal with difficult circumstances. We all deal with challenges. We all deal with struggles. We all deal with stress. We all have to face tests in life. Amen? Is that everybody? Now, not everybody raised their hand and said they were ready for this. But you should have, because based on what I just said, it applies to all of us. We all face and deal with things every day. From small things like breaking something and it just frustrating you, something tearing up, to something drastic like the loss of a job, the death of a loved one, the challenge of a relationship. And I believe if you will have some type of heightened awareness during this series, I believe that God can really speak to you and impact your life and show you how to deal with life better. Even to the point of showing you your greatest potential in life. Not just getting through those things that we have to deal with, but even showing you your greatest potential. And I don't believe you'll see problems and situations and challenges that you face the same way when we're done in week 4. So whatever it's going to take for you to be here these next 4 weeks, decide now that it's going to happen. I'm not going to miss a week, or at least tune in online during or after the fact. All of our messages are on Facebook and YouTube. You can tune in after the fact, but don't miss one of these weeks, because I believe it can change your life. Your life is filled with problems, but we're going to call them today opportunities as we open this series called Proving Grounds, also known as the testing place. Proving ground. We're going to look at these problems, these situations, these difficulties, these things we deal with. And when we face them, we're like, I'm having to deal with this. But all the while, God says this is an opportunity. The term proving grounds is defined as this, and I took this straight out of Merriam-Webster. A place where something is developed or tested. A place where something is developed or tested. That's proving grounds. That's how it's defined. And we often hear this term when we're looking at the testing of scientific experiments, automobiles, weaponry even, sports, technology. Different things we see where the proving grounds is where things are developed and tested. This weekend, for those of you that live under a rock, this weekend we started a holy season, and it's called college football. It's a holy season. I see Pastor Jack here is confused. I understand he's ministered for decades. And he's totally missed this holy season. He's not celebrated it for years. And here's why football season is holy. If your team wins, you come in here on Sunday morning and you give God praise for letting your team be victorious. But if your team loses, you come in here and you ask God for forgiveness for the things you said and did when your team lost. Football draws us closer to the Lord. Good or bad. I say that jokingly, and most of you know me by now. But when you think about football even, when you think about other sports, athletes are put on the field and they are tested. They are given an opportunity to go and be developed, and they're pushed to their limits as the coaches stand on the sidelines or even on the field with them to say, hey, let me see your potential. And they are pushed and pressed until everything's been gotten out of them. And as you hear it said often, leave it all on the field. Give it everything you got so that the coaches can see your full potential. I use my coaching role as an example often in here. I'll do it again. Friday night, my kids, my team, we're gathered on the field. We're practicing baseball Friday night. I've got 11 kids out there under the age of between the age of 10 and 12. This is our last practice Friday night before game week. We start games this Tuesday. And I've got some kids on my team that, like 5 or 6 of them, almost half the team, I've never coached. Didn't know anything about them about 3 weeks ago. Didn't know their potential, didn't know their skills, their strengths, their weaknesses, what they brought to the table. And I told them at our first practice, hey, show me what you got. Leave it out here. So Friday, I huddled them together on the field before the practice started. And I said, okay, guys, Tuesday's our first game. All right? We've got 12 kids on our team. We've got 9 spots on the field. 3 of you are going to sit the bench. At all times, if everybody's here, 3 people are sitting on the bench. We're going to have a lineup of 12 people. Everybody bats in this age group. So you have to determine whether or not you play or sit the bench and whether or not you bat second or bat 12th. I don't determine that. You say, well, you're the coach. You make the lineup. You send them out into the field. Yeah, but I'm going to put the kid in the position that gives us the best opportunity to win. So, guys, you've got to prove to me tonight, this is our final practice, prove to me that this is the position you're supposed to play in. This is the spot in the lineup you're supposed to bat in. And I send them out there to practice. Then it's on them. It's on them. I'm there to support them. I'm there to help them. I'm there to coach them, develop them, help tell them what they're doing wrong to make it right, reinforce what they do right so that they'll do it again and repeat it. But it's on them to make sure that they are reaching their full potential. You see, proving grounds are known in business. They're known in sports and even in academics. But God allows us to step onto the proving grounds for something completely different. These moments can be seen as opportunities and not just tests. There are places and spaces and there are moments in our life when we're given these opportunities to prove ourselves. And these opportunities can be grounds to develop us and change us and make us into something greater. Maybe even take us into something greater. And I believe you'll look at your opportunities and your problems differently when you see them as a moment of purpose. When you look at, that's where we're going to hang our hat this morning and for the rest of this series. When you can come to a realization that this thing you're dealing with is an opportunity to show you your purpose, to see it fulfilled and not just a problem, it will completely change how you view your life. Because on the proving grounds, when we're going through something, our attitude is tested. You might could say, well, yeah, when I go through something really difficult, it tests my attitude. No. Life. The little moments in life are when we get tested. Like when your kid smarts off at you. And then you make a quick decision on how your attitude's going to respond. And I'm just going to be honest, mine is not always good. Because see, I see an opportunity there, Anthony, and it's an opportunity to show them who's boss. I see the opportunity. But there's been times I've had to go back and apologize to my kids because my attitude was not where it should have been. So our attitude is tested in these moments. Our determination is tested. Our commitments are tested. Our relationships are tested. And sometimes God is just testing you and pressing you and repeatedly doing it just to see if you're going to be able to withstand the time. I like to watch this show called How It's Made. Anybody ever watched that on Discovery Channel or something? I love that show. How It's Made. And every 30-minute episode, they talk about like 3 different items and how those things are made. Some type of product. I love to see how things are made, how they come about, how they're created. Really cool show. And I remember just a few weeks ago, I was watching that show on television, and they were building cars. And they were talking specifically about this automobile and the design of the seat in the automobile, the driver's seat. And they showed this machinery in this factory, and there's an actual driver's seat just sitting there, like you would put in a car. Seems like it was like a Volvo or something. And there was this machine with this big hydraulic, hammer-looking thing on it. And it was doing this to the seat. Did y'all get it? Do you mean to keep going? And they were talking about how that hammer will slam down on that seat thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times to simulate someone plopping their booty down in the car seat. Just to see if it will withstand 10 years, 15 years worth of use. It gets tested to make sure it can endure something. Let me give you a real life example. You've got that person in your life that just tests you. Oh, now I got your attention. That boss, that coworker, that family member, that child, that neighbor, that friend, that person in your family that's just testing you. And they just won't go away. And you're like, God, you must be testing my salvation with this person. Because I just don't know if I can take it anymore. And God is looking at you while you're dealing with this person, this individual. And like a coach on the sidelines, he's just sitting there waiting to see how you're going to handle the moment. How you're going to handle the situation. To see how you will handle the adversity. To see how you'll use the moment to grow. To see how your attitude and your faith and your determination and your commitment withstands the test. And if we really want to get where God desires us to go, we've got to be able to get through those moments. And not let those moments get to us. You have to be willing to put in the work that it takes. Here's the problem with Christians sometimes. We serve this God that the pastor stands up and says is able to do anything we need. And we just want to go rub that genie bottle and ask God to make it happen. To fix it. And we don't want to do our part. We don't want to do what it takes to make the contribution, to see ourselves get through that situation. We just want him to fix it on our own. But he knows who he wants us to be. He knows who we were created to be. And he wants us to prove ourselves. Let me show you an example in Scripture. This is in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 6. This is a very common text, and you know this story very well. You know it very well. Chapter 6, verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Here's Jesus and his disciples in this great crowd. And Jesus is like, Philip's sitting here and he's enjoying life. One of the disciples, and he's just enjoying it. And he's like, man, we got this big following. It's a really cool day. It's a great crowd. They're excited about what's going on. And then Jesus is like, well, how are we going to feed these people? How are we going to feed them? Where shall we go buy bread? Here's what verse 6 says. Jesus asked this only to test him. For he already had in mind what he was going to do. He asked this question not because he needed an answer. He is Jesus. He didn't need an answer. He asked the question to see what kind of answer he would get. He was trying to test Philip. As a matter of fact, the King James Version reads it like this. And this he said to prove him. Proving grounds. Proving grounds. To prove him. For Philip, this is just some natural, normal moment. He's hanging out with Jesus. He's hanging out with his brothers. He's hanging out with these thousands of people. He's living life. Jesus, everything's going well. Jesus has been preaching. And he had no idea that a test was coming in that moment. Usually you prepare for a test. But we know that life hits us unexpectedly. And that's what happened right here in this moment. All of a sudden, Philip's got this situation and he's got to answer this question. And he was not ready for this test. And I want you to listen to his response. He totally missed an opportunity here. Look at verse 7. Philip answered him, man, it would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Now, I don't want to beat up on Philip here. I mean, Philip's probably a good guy. We know some good Philips around here. I don't want to beat up on Philip here, but I don't think he passed the test. What happened was Philip kind of set the stage for the whole moment for all those that were there. And you see this negativity kind of start to flood into the moment. He's given an opportunity, and Jesus, who's performing all these miracles, Jesus himself says, where are we going to get the money to buy the food for everybody? And Philip's like, yeah, man, who's got that kind of money? We sure don't. Don't look at me. I don't have it. Totally missed it. He focused on the problem rather than seeing the opportunity. And all of a sudden, there's panic set in with the disciples. As a matter of fact, if you read this same story in Matthew's gospel, the disciples told Jesus to send the crowds away and let them go buy their own food. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm not beating up on Philip because I'd have probably said the same thing. I would have been probably the guy that had been like, hey, man, they can go buy their own food. I mean, there's got to be 5,000 men here, not counting children and women. Let them go buy their own food. And you see that Philip's response overwhelmed him. And this sense of negativity came into the moment. But there was this one disciple that saw it as an opportunity. Look at verse 8. another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? We know how this story ends. And I want you to listen to me. I don't want to paint this picture that Andrew was some great man of faith. Andrew was not the one that's over-optimistic and stepped in and was like, do y'all know who we're with? We're with Jesus. And he can do anything. The Son of God. That's not what Andrew did here. But Andrew did see an opportunity, because the scripture then tells us that he even questioned that, hey, we've got this, but it's only going to go so far. So he had his doubts as well. But he saw enough opportunity there to take advantage. Andrew found this play in the playbook and thought, hey, we're 99 yards from the goal line and only a few seconds on the clock. And it sure don't look good. We're backed into a corner. But, as they say in Dumb and Dumber, you're telling me there's a chance. You're telling me there's a little bit of an opportunity there. We don't have much to work with, Andrew says, but we have something. And with Jesus, sometimes something is all he needs. Something is certainly better than nothing in this situation. When you're talking about food and hungry people, something is better than nothing. Philip, you can come. That's all God needs. When you're on the proving grounds and you're being tested and your life is being challenged, God is not expecting you to fix it yourself. God is not expecting you to fix it yourself. But he is expecting you to give it your all and to prove yourself. To be optimistic about the situation. To put your trust in him. He's not asking you to drive down the field on your own. He simply wants you to step onto the field and give the situation what you have. And there's times in life when you're backed in the corner and life's just working against you and you're like, I got nothing else to give. That's not true. That's not the truth. You bring something to the table. You bring something. And the Lord is just wanting to see if you're willing to do your part. So many times we find ourselves in need and we have these requests that we present to the Lord, and we just, me included, we just want God to do it. I can't stand that with my kids sometimes. My kids are at an age now where I'm having to teach them how to do things on their own. They need to be taught that. That's part of the development process as a parent and a child. And sometimes my kid will be like, well, Dad, just do it for me. No. You need to learn. Is it easier if I did it for them? Is it quicker? Is it less of a headache? Absolutely. But that's teaching them nothing except to depend on me completely. And I'm just wanting them to at least give it a try. Just do their part. And sometimes we think, God, I got nothing for this. All he needs is a little bit. You know what I'm thankful for? People that give $500 towards the church for Project Restore. People that, like I announced a couple weeks ago, that came in and gave money towards Uganda missions. People that can give that type of support to the ministries that God's doing in this church. I'm thankful for that. I'm not asking everybody to do it. I've never done that. I've never said, oh, somebody gave $500. Who else is going to meet that challenge? I'm not going to do that. God's not going to ask more out of you than you can give. Somebody walked in this church a few weeks ago, and I've been waiting to share this story. They walked in this church a few weeks ago, and they secretly walked up to me, and they slid some money in my hand. And they said, use it for whatever you need for this church. And I was like, okay, we'll use it wisely. And I felt the person's heart. Y'all know what I mean? Like I felt their heart. I stuck that money in my pocket and I went on about my business. It was after service. And I thought, well, I'll just put it in the offering next week. So as I was closing up the sanctuary that day, I came over here and I was going to put the money in the offering plate so it would be there for next Sunday. That's where we keep our stash in case any of you need some help. And I pulled it out of my pocket and I looked and it was $3. It was $3. Listen, that person didn't have a lot to give, but they gave what they had. And this is not about money today. When we give something to the Lord and we give all we can and we make an effort to contribute to our situations, that's all He's asking. That's all He's asking. And then He'll do the rest. You have so much potential in your life. So much potential. Whether you're 14 or 40 or 80, you've got potential left in your life. I promise you do. Don't let life's circumstances keep you buried down, thinking that the game's over, that you don't have a chance anymore. No, you're still in the game. You're here, you're still in the game. My team got beat yesterday by a 72-year-old coach who is still traveling the country and recruiting athletes and practicing every day and putting in probably 16-hour days. And he don't need the money. Mac Brown doesn't need the money. And they asked him, why are you doing this? He was like, because I like to pour into young people. What? You're still in the game. What is it God is wanting to do with you? All He needs is a little bit. Just a little bit. Don't let life's circumstances get you down. Don't buy into it. You be Andrew and you walk up to the situation and say, hey man, Jesus, this doesn't look good. I'm not even sure it'll work, but this is what we got. Where can we go from here? And let Jesus perform the miracle in your life.